Hi, this is Doug Ward from Tech Britain. We're StartUp Weekend back with the facilitator, Nick Stevens. Thanks for your time, Nick. Just for our audience, Nick, they don't know about the StartUp Weekend perhaps. What is it?
StartUp Weekend is a global organization based out of Seattle in the States. We hold events for entrepreneurs or people who want to be entrepreneurs that focus on learning over the space of a weekend.
Before going further on with that, what about yourself, Nick? What's your background?
So my background is high school dropout, followed by a few years of retail experience and then 12 years of corporate America. So I've moved around the world. I've lived in the UK, the Netherlands, California. I currently live back in the Netherlands. Mostly business operations, supply chain, logistics, manufacturing-based stuff. And 3 years ago, I decided to bail out of that and become an entrepreneur again.
Awesome. And what did you get involved with?
So I got involved with a small technology startup in the Netherlands. We had a great product for businesses that went very nicely. I left those guys in 2011, but slightly earlier in 2010, I also started my own technology company, again focusing on very specific products for large enterprise-sized customers.
Yeah.
On Twitter, I'm at Cloggish. If you want to email me, I'm nickstevens@startupweekend.org, or you can just Google Nick Stevens and look for my pretty face.
So how did you get involved with StartUp Weekend, Nick?
I got involved just over a year ago. There was an event in Amsterdam. I noticed there wasn't much in the way of social media buzz about the event, and I was really surprised. So I wrote to the guys organizing it and said, hey, I've got a ticket for this event. I can't find any info. How can I help? And I actually became one of the organizers for that event, as well as attending it, which is a little bit unusual.
Awesome.
12 months later, I think this is my 12th event and having a lot of fun.
Awesome. And people who want to find out about StartUp Weekends, there's a website, it'll be online. They're thinking, sounds good, I like the idea. What can they expect? First time experience, what can people expect?
So this is actually a really good question. 80% of the people who come to a StartUp Weekend, or sometimes a little more, have never been to a StartUp Weekend. So there's a lot of anticipation and not much expectation. And that's how we like it. You can expect to come along and meet some fantastic people. The kind of people who come to a StartUp Weekend are a cut above the rest. People who are really motivated, who really want to succeed, who are prepared to work hard, who have faith in something they don't yet necessarily understand. After meeting some good people, you're going to hear some fantastic ideas. You're going to pick some projects to work on. You're going to work harder over the space of one weekend than you probably did the preceding 2 weeks. You know yourself, you've been up all night, but it doesn't feel like hard work. You're learning a lot, but it doesn't feel like you're at school because you're just learning it by doing it, and talking and making stuff happen. By the end of the weekend, you'll be exhausted, running on adrenaline, having a really great time, and you might actually have a business.
Absolutely. I mean, probably our day 3 now. It's the last day. We have 3 hours, 4 hours sleep because of the quality of people I'm working with. Being around the passion, just don't feel tired.
Yeah, it's incredible, and that's why people, like me, keep coming back, because we see people come to a StartUp Weekend, and we see such a difference between Friday night and Sunday afternoon. We bring introverts out of their shells. We allow extroverts to run and lead teams. We let techies figure out business models. We let non-techies. We've got guys out there right now who are learning to code from a book as they're building a product. It's incredible.
I think it's important what you touched on. Introverts who perhaps they're not necessarily the guys who go out and meet strangers and talk about tech. We were very much the bedroom guys for quite some time. We didn't understand the value of it.
Yep.
Can we just reaffirm that value? It is tangible from your experience.
It's incredible. I mean, I'm myself somewhat introverted, although it doesn't appear so now because I have this job where I have to put myself in front of people. But traditional networking is very intimidating. To walk in as somebody who's on the introverted side of the spectrum to a room of 150 strangers for the purposes of just talking to people, like a traditional networking event, is incredibly intimidating, and people just don't do it. StartUp Weekend democratizes that because you're coming along to work on a product, so you're bringing your skills. All of a sudden you understand the value you bring, but you also need the other people, so it's a classic teamwork situation. It's a little bit smaller. The typical event is around 80 to 100 people, and it's much easier, and it's a risk-free environment for you to just put yourself out there and try something. If on Monday morning you hated it, that's okay. You'll never do it again, but you've learned something. But actually what we find is that those people come along, they get involved, and they realize that, wow, actually I can do this. I've learned something, I've got a new skill, I've met some great people, and I added value. And for some people that can be a turning point in their life.
It's interesting you say that, Nick. Like when we first met, I never would have believed that when you're on stage, it's just you're natural on stage, kind of. So you, from an outside looking, it's hard to imagine. I kind of think it's important for viewers to hear that because extroverts, they sound brash and like they're gonna just be dickish. Pardon my language, in case my mother's watching. But so I just think it's important to get across that when people meet you in person, Nick, you're not this loud, obnoxious guy. You're actually someone who's really willing to help people. And I found that with everybody here this weekend, from the brash, bullish trader to the quiet guy. Everybody, it is that kind of community, right?
Yeah, and not just with the organisers. We have a range of organisers all around the world who are all volunteers, and of course, when you do that, you have every walk of life. We've got some incredibly smart, very studious, very work-oriented, hugely experienced people. We have some much younger, more vibrant characters and everything in between. But the common goal is to be here to help people. When you take those people and put them with the attendees who are here to learn something and to give something, their own skill, all for the sake of trying to build something, trying to learn, trying to help each other, you end up with this community that is just almost self-propelling itself into everybody's helping everybody. And it sounds a little cliched, but it just works. And so one of the things is, a lot of people talk about their first startup weekend event. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm kind of bored about hearing about it because it's some variation on, I worked hard, my mind was blown, it was awesome. And I've never heard anybody describe it in different words, different stories, but that's the general narrative. What I like to talk about is the second, third, or fourth events, because that's when people start to realize that this is not an accident. This is repeatable, it's scalable. We're up to something like 600 events, 400 more planned for this year alone. It's happening all around the world. We're on every continent. We're as far as Mongolia, New Zealand, China, Latin America.
I mean, sorry to be rude, you were just over in Greece last week, right?
Greece last weekend for a summit of organisers from Europe. The week before that I was in Kosovo. That was their second event. A few weeks before that I was in Prague. I've done Paris, Copenhagen, London, Amsterdam, right down to some very small cities. This event is the first time in Bath, and we've got about 50 people in the building, but it's 50 awesome people doing great stuff.
So obviously expat based in the Netherlands, that patriotic pride of the UK, you start to see the tech community rise. What do you think we're missing on a global scale? Because I think it's interesting, given your background, you spent a lot of time in the States. What do we need to do to be able to compete 5-10 years from now?
So, if you think about the UK as it was, 150 and maybe even 25 years ago, we were a country that built stuff. We created the Industrial Revolution that changed the world into what we know it today. And now we don't know how to make stuff anymore. We don't make cars anymore. Most of that is outsourced, or if we do still make it here, it's owned by a Chinese company. So all of that physical manufacturing is gone, and we'll never be able to bring it back. Small cottage industry stuff, fine. Large-scale manufacturing, we'll never bring it back. It's too expensive. We've lost the knowledge. People won't invest in it. Technology is the new industrial revolution. Technology is growing now at such a rate. It's becoming so easy. I don't want to belittle the work that the tech community does, but anybody can learn to code. How well they learn, that's a different story. But if you wanted to start learning to code next week, you can. There are schools out there, you can do it online, it's free, there are subsidies, So that is going to be the new industrial revolution, and the UK is in a really great place. We've got lots of smart people, we've got a great tech community all over the UK, and it's now coming together to form one larger community. If you look at stuff like the Google campus in London, Silicon Roundabout, there's all these companies understanding the value. And I think that this could be the new way of restarting Britain's manufacturing culture. It just happens to be technology instead of products.
So can you see in the future the UK having Google-type businesses of its own?
I'd like to think so. I mean, that's up to the people. That's up to the entrepreneurs and the businesses where they want to be based. I think there's some political stuff around that. We hear the current government talking a lot about starting business and entrepreneurship, but we don't see the money for it yet, so there's a lot of work to do, but ultimately it's down to the people. I spent 3 years living in the States, and that cliche of the American dream is true. They are born and from a very early age told you either succeed or die. We don't have that in the UK, but the more entrepreneurship that occurs, the more normal that feeling will be.
Absolutely. I'd just like to say it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.